So this is just a short story on what actually happened when I got sick, isn't it, Binky? And Binky's just going to sleep while I tell the story because he really can't be bothered. Where have your eyes gone, Binks? They're inside your whiskers. So what actually happened was I was really poorly, and I had pleurisy, I had a blood clot, I had a number of things, and I was very ill, and for 2 weeks I barely moved. So sometimes when I'm not well, Binky seems to follow suit, but sometimes we didn't know if it was coincidence or it did actually happen, but it did happen. So about, I think it was 2 weeks in, just before I went into hospital, the actual day I went in hospital, we found Binky under the bed, laying in his wee, and he'd had a seizure. So he was, let me lift that up so you can actually see him. So he was very sick. So I was trying to treat him and give him plenty of water and the bits and pieces he needed to pick him up. So he needed a painkiller because when he has a seizure, his gut stops moving. But there was something very different this time. So Binky, that afternoon, got the most terrible diarrhea. And if you have rabbits, you know that diarrhea is absolutely a catastrophe in a bunny. So I absolutely panicked. I rang the vet. I couldn't go to the vet because I'd been so poorly. There was no way I was going to be able to go to the vet like that. And Karen wasn't in. So I rang Karen. I sent her a picture of what actually Binky produced from his stomach, which I'm going to show you now, which is on my phone, which is what I sent to Karen. So that is what Binky did. So down there between that half, that's where that is, and that was what came out of Binky. And I absolutely panicked because diarrhea in a rabbit, it can be, a lot of the time it's fatal. So the vet I spoke to said that she thought that the seizure caused the diarrhea due to the stress. She told me what to do. She told me to make up his nuggets in a mix with some critical care, very thick, and feed him that. And give him Fiberplex. Now this sounded a bit weird because Binky's on Fiberplex to keep him going and put good bacteria in his stomach. But she said give him 2 turns of Fiberplex because that actually will bind his stomach up and feed him. Basically what I did is every half an hour I fed him some of this, ours is called Recovery Plus. Critical care doesn't work with Binky and sometimes it's made him worse. And I don't know if it's the pineapple in it or what, but it makes him worse. So he has Recovery Plus. So I'd made up some of that and I'd made up his Burgess nuggets, mixed them all together, and I fed him about half a syringe every half an hour, but very, very, very thick, because she said if it was runny at all, it would go straight through him. In between that, I was putting him on my lap. He was that ill, he just sat on my lap, and I was feeding 0.0 syringes of water down the side of his mouth, and I just kept putting water in. Now this diarrhea continued to the point it was falling out of him. Even if I just moved him, it was just falling out of his body. His breathing was getting slower, he was getting colder and colder, and I did quite a bit of research and I decided that, now I'm not advising people to do this, so I just want to say that. This was a last ditch attempt, basically kill or cure, because Binky, it was very different to all of his episodes, and he really was. His eyes were red, his nose was pale, his tongue was pale, He felt actually hard, like rock, like stone. He was cold, and when Binky's sick, he breathes quite fast, but his breathing was getting slower. So I actually got an Imodium melt, and I tore off, because it was a melt, it was like a little round piece of paper, and I tore off the corner of it, and I put it on the end of my finger, and I pushed it down the side of his mouth. And then I carried on with what I was doing with him, and just hoping and praying that he would be okay. So 5 hours later, Binky was still with us, and it started to slow. We had some partially solid poos. Karen was home. I was still trying to deal with him, but she was taking over, by which time I was so ill that I could barely stand. Sweat was dripping off me. I was crying because I didn't want to leave him like that, because if he died, that would break me, but it would break me even more if I wasn't there either. I would feel like I don't know, I'd just feel it was my fault. So we got him to a point, I think 3 hours after Karen got home, we'd got him to a point where he was actually stable. And I'd got to a point where the pains in my chest, I actually thought I was having a heart attack. We decided that I needed to go to the hospital straight away, and that's what we did. But I was so poorly that by the time I got to the hospital, I actually collapsed and ended up in resus. So that's that story. I have a picture on my phone of when I was very first admitted, no, actually about 2 days in, and that's actually how, here is how I actually looked. And Karen was like, "How are you feeling?" You're right there. Oh, you look like a horse when you do that. Karen had asked me how I was feeling, and I sent her a picture, and that was how I was feeling. I was really, really not well at all. I was not in a good place. So that was that. How aren't you? Huh? Are you better? Are you better now? So he's okay, as you can see. His poo is a bit off, and it has been for the last week, but I expect that because he's been really, really poorly. But he's back to bouncing around and rolling in his pot, as you saw, and Karen took great care of him for the week I was in hospital. And I'll show you some bits and pieces that I'm actually on for what was wrong with me. So just for people that know us, I'm sorry, did I stop talking? For people that know us, that was what actually happened. That's the first time Binky's ever had diarrhea. So I was absolutely, I just didn't know what to do. And he was getting more and more dehydrated. It was really, really scary. But I do believe the corner of the Imodium actually saved his life. Didn't it, Binks? Again, I don't advise people to do that. I was also giving Binky subcut fluids, which the vet, I've discussed with the vet, and I'm allowed to do because I'm trained to do subcut on me. And she explained, this was a couple of months ago when he was ill before, she'd explained where to put the needle in his neck and how to do it, and I'm trained in subcut anyway, so I was giving him 0.5 in his neck, and in between that I was putting water in his mouth. So the big thing with a rabbit with diarrhea is hydrating them, because just a small amount of diarrhea in a rabbit can actually kill them very, very quickly, because they just dehydrate. But as you can see, he's fine now and washing his feet. Is your foot dirty, Binks? Are your dirty feet? Or are you licking the ear cheese out of your toes? Ugh. If you're not eating poo, you're eating ear cheese. Ah, you're so cute, aren't you? Are you a cutie boy? Yeah. He's having his nails cut today, so he's going to hate that. But we've had to wait till he's like completely better to cut his nails, because I don't want to stress him and then he starts all over again. So in Binky, stress causes his seizures, because when he's been to the vet in the past, when he's completely well, he's had a massive seizure from going to the vet. So stress does bring them on, but I'm not sure what brought this on, because he was under my bed. He'd gone 3 months, I believe, without a fit, and the CBD was working perfect, and it still is. But Binky has got a lot bigger, so he was only 1.6 when he started CBD, and he's now 2.1. So it's going to be my call whether to up it a little bit. He's on 2 drops twice a day at the moment, but it's not something I can really discuss with the vet. Although I've told him he's on it, it's not something they do. So it's kind of an alternative therapy for Binky, because they don't really know why he has seizures, whether he's epileptic or whether they just don't know. They just know he's got a neurological problem, and that causes him to have seizures. But for the amount of tests he would have to find out why he has seizures would probably kill him anyway. So it's kind of a treat as we go with Binky, because he's perfectly happy. You can see in his videos he's loving life. He's not unhappy, he's not in pain on a daily basis, but he does have these seizures very randomly, and it's so sudden. I thought he was better that day, because after his seizure, I think it was 4 hours, he went out and played in the garden like nothing happened. And then an hour after he came in is when we found him covered in diarrhea. So I don't know. The seizure probably caused the diarrhea. So anyway, we have a lot on GI stasis, don't we, Binky? But we've never had the diarrhea problem. No. Are you all clean now? Are you ready for the ball? Are you handsome? Are you a handsome boy? He looks unwell, but he's not. He's just tired. Yeah, are you sleepy? Let me see what he does if I cluck him. This is how we see if Binky's well. Pear? You want your pear? Yeah, I'll go get it. So that's how we see if Binky's well. If we cluck him and he sticks his head out, he wants his pear. If he doesn't, right, let me go get it. Bless his heart. He's like, where is it then? Hang on, I'll go get it. I'll put that on you, and I'll go get your pear. Let's see what you do while I'm gone. There. So that small little piece of fruit you can see, a tiny sliver of pear, is what Binky's allowed because of his gut issues, because of his neuro problems. It's very sad because that's all he can have, but he enjoys the little bits you have, don't you? What you got hanging off your chin? What is hanging off your chin? So gone are the days Binky can just indulge himself eating a pear in front of him. He's not allowed to do that anymore. And he can't eat banana anymore either, which he hasn't had for many months now. Have you? But he likes his little fruit treat, and he has got a sugar level problem. So by giving him a little piece of, like a tiny slither of pear every 4 hours, normally we do that, it keeps his sugars stable. And then you don't go all lollopy on me, do you? Did you like your pear? Do you want Pinky? You want Pinky? He does like his little piece of pear. He's looking at me like, what are you doing? You're normally down here because you're going to pick me up and medicate me. Or you're going to annoy me. I know. So that's the story of what just happened with Binky.